Welcome to Capital Preview, brought to you by MediaCom.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Peard. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Iowa Cable and Telecommunications Association. I'm bringing Capital Preview to you today, a special COVID edition. Our guest today is Debi Durham, Director of the Iowa Economic Authority and the Iowa Finance Authority. And I've known Debi for a long time, and Iowa is in good and capable hands with her kind of helping drive the ship along with our great governor. So welcome, Debi.
Oh, it's so good to be with you, Bill. Of course, I always want to call you mayor. You were mayor for so long. It's hard for me not to say that, Mayor Bill. Yes.
Yeah, yep. That it seemed like a lifetime ago with this, because after I retired, it wasn't very long after that the COVID hit and everything just kind of went in different directions. So
we have many fond memories. I remember obviously the Apple deal. That was certainly a great day when Tim was here, and I remember you were there. Your foot was in a cast or something, right?
Yeah,
but it didn't stop you from being there. Yes.
I'd had foot surgery, and
right.
I told the audience that day, because we were on the step of the Capitol with the governor and Tim Cook, and I said, it's not bad being mayor on a day like this. So, yeah.
I would say that was a great
a town
legacy.
of 25,000 people is sitting there with the CEO of Apple and the governor of the state. So, yep, good memories.
Good memories.
Debi, I'm going to ask you, how has the state supported Iowa businesses throughout the pandemic response, and how has that support continued to the economic recovery phase?
Well, I think what you can say about our efforts is we moved swiftly and we moved with purpose. And I think when it's all said and done and we look back upon these days, you're going to show that we moved with compassion. The governor challenged us to do something with our small businesses, those consumer-facing organizations that were being so devastated that were really forced to close by civil proclamation. And, Bill, keep in mind, that's not a population that we're used to serving at any kind of scale at IEDA. So we began drafting a small business relief grant program on the 18th of March. We announced it on the 23rd, applications ready on the 24th, and by April 10th, we had our first checks out, and it exceeded all expectations. We received over 14,000 applicants. I mean, now that we've gone through and kind of filtered our spreadsheets and duplications, we're still close to 1,300. And we're still getting checks out the door. We're still reviewing applications. But I think it made a real difference for people. It not only helped those that were out, we got out quickly to short term until some of the SBA programs began to flow in our economy. But right now, as they're pivoting to reopen, we're still there to help. So it's making a huge difference.
Debi, how long do you think this economic impact of the pandemic will be?
That's a really good question. It's a hard question, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because I think it also depends on the sectors. I mean, if I had to tell you today, I think, for instance, the housing construction industry, because of where interest rates are and how strong that was going into this, I think we could truly see a V-shaped recovery. So it could come out in the third and fourth quarters pretty strongly, right? The rest of the economy, manufacturing, even so, we didn't close, we didn't do a shelter in place, and I believe that was the right call all along. But even with that, we've seen reductions in manufacturing due to really supply chain constraints and obviously employees being impacted. And so we've had to deal with that. But I think that, I'm thinking in a year from now, I honestly think by the third and fourth quarters, you're going to see us come out stronger. Certainly not back to where we were, but we went into this so strong, Bill, in almost every front. Every sector was doing well in Iowa, and the ones that were soft, like manufacturing, was really starting to show a comeback because of the trade agreements. And the other thing that was so good for Iowa is that, our fiscal house was in order. We have a balanced budget. Our reserves were full. And that has served us well. And, the unemployment trust fund, I mean, look how strong and solvent that has been. So I think with that said, and now I think the next step is we just have to build consumer confidence that until there's a vaccine, we're going to have to learn to live with COVID, and live with COVID means that we're going to have to go out and start supporting our businesses again, and doing it in a very healthy and safe way with all the measures that our public health department has been advising us from the beginning.
Yeah, I had a conversation with one of my friends about that very same thing this morning, is that it's the new reality. We're just going to have to learn how to deal with this virus, because it's not going to go away in 30 days and 60 days and 90 days. It'll be a while. And so we're going to have to adapt our life to make that happen. So
I agree.
Tell me what a V-shaped recovery is for the people that don't. I mean, I have a good guess of what it is. But
well, a V-shaped cycle is one that something dramatic has forced us to the bottom, right? And that's what happened. Something that was beyond any of our control or even our comprehension. I mean, who would have ever thought?
Nobody.
And a V-shape means that you hit bottom. Once you hit bottom, you know where it is, and you start coming out very strong. And I think that, time will tell whether that's going to happen, or there's the U-shaped, which is really what happened in 08, 09, where you tend to linger there, right? Which is what we don't. And the newest one they talk about, economists, is the W, which means that there would be a recurrence in the fall. And I'm hoping that is certainly not the case. So I do think that the likelihood of us being a V, I think, can be strong because of the amount of liquidity that was placed in the marketplace. I mean, listen, I've been around for a long time. I just celebrated my 60th birthday, and I've been doing economic development my whole life. And I've gone through the 9/11s, and I saw the 08, 09. And this was different. And I've never seen the federal government respond as quickly as they did with getting money in the streets. Think about it. Iowa received over $5 billion in PPP loans, unheard of in a short period of time.
Exactly.
You look at that, we'll have almost $100 million of small business grants out in the marketplace. And you look at all just the money, the $1.25 billion coming into our state, and the amount of liquidity is beyond anything I've ever seen. And so that has to be factored in. So if you can open up the economy, which we're doing, and if you can build that consumer confidence, because consumers are equally as important in this recovery, right? I mean, they're probably the stars of this recovery. It really depends on if the consumers are going to start spending that cash. You look at the extra people on unemployment. You got people making more money on unemployment now than they did when they worked, which is a disincentive. I'm not promoting that, but you've got that extra $600 a week. You've got the individual stimulus checks that were sent out to a large part of our population. And so again, we've got money, it needs to circulate. And once it starts doing that, then I think the likelihood of having a V recovery is very, very possible.
I think Iowa, and I'm sure, I think you've mentioned that, and if you haven't, I certainly will offer that up, that Iowa had a super strong economy when this hit. So what's your predictions how long it's going to take Iowa?
I think it's still going to take a year. I mean, I really do think it will take a year to truly get back to where we were. And there's a lot of things that factor into that, right? I mean, because I have to say, here we're dealing with the COVID, and then we have the unrest that we see right now because of the events in in Minneapolis, right?
Right.
And so it's to have that, pile that on already to a very fragile situation is concerning, very concerning. And so, who knows what things we hold in the future. But the thing I do know about Iowans is that we're resilient, right? And we're hardworking. And even in the 08, 09, we still fare better than most states because, again, I think it has to do with just, the way we just take things on. I mean, we deal with what's in front of us. Neighbors take care of neighbors here. And so I do think that, we could really see this economy come back within a year. I think other economists are calling for longer. And of course, none of us have a crystal ball, Bill. We're just based on, what we're seeing today and basically based on what we've experienced in the past and combining those two things.
And that's why in college, I didn't feel it was fair that they graded economics, because one economist says this and the other economist says
Well,
this,
isn't that the truth?
and who's right?
Mhm. Exactly.
Hey, the governor announced that part of the Iowa's Federal CARES Act funding would be directed to broadband expansion. I believe the number was $80 million. How will this change the way we do business in Iowa because of that?
Well, Governor Reynolds has always had broadband connectivity as a priority since she took office, and it was even there in Governor Branstad's administration as well. I think what we've learned through COVID is it's now become an imperative. And it's like, it's broadband must happen now with an exclamation mark. And as we realized, I think that's where we really saw our shortcomings during this. Right? We saw the places that had broadband connectivity, the school districts that were prepared to deliver education online, and those districts who were not. Or, the telemedicine. I mean, we know that we have a shortage of physicians, not just even in rural Iowa, but across the state. And we knew that we needed to do telemedicine, but it was not something consumers were comfortable with. Well, they are now, right?
Absolutely.
We're all becoming, so I think that was a great thing that came from it. Now we just simply need to build the infrastructure around that. And so broadband will be up front and center. So when the governor puts together her advisory group, this private-public partnership she's going to put together to really focus on recovery and growth of Iowa, that broadband really is that horizontal bar that crosses through every single platform that we're going to be working on, whether it's agriculture with precision ag, whether it's medicine, whether it's education, or even manufacturing 4.0 is all about the digital movement. And as we're transitioning to this new fourth industrial revolution. So you are absolutely right. It is the most critical thing that we can do moving forward. And not only just broadband, but the other thing we learned as a state agency delivering services, that how antiquated some of our systems are, Bill, like whether it's the Department of Revenue or Workforce Development. And it's interesting because we talk about that extra $600 a week, but the reason that was settled on, because what the Congress wanted to do was simply make people whole, right? That was their intention.
Right.
But our systems are so antiquated across the country in workforce areas that they couldn't do that. So they had to pick a number. And so I think that's also made us lose. I think you're going to see coming forward, if not in this session, future sessions, that legislature needs to invest in the enterprise of government, right? And to make sure our systems are what they need to do to be able to deliver the systems that we did. Even learning things with the small business development system or grant. I mean, I'm proud of what we did, but if we had better systems in place, right, before this, it could have been a lot easier, and we've learned a lot from it, and are going to take those practices and apply them going forward.
And I know one thing about Debi Durham, she's an extremely positive person. And I think along with a lot of bad that's happened, I think a lot of good will come from this, because we have become innovative, and we'll discover, like you said, new practices and maybe overhaul of our system. And so I believe that.
Well, because it's true. I mean, I have to tell you, innovation is the order of the day. And when I think of what Iowa could do and how we're positioned in the bioeconomy, we just put out that report about immunotherapy and vaccines and what the University of Iowa can do with Iowa State University, the resources. I mean, think of the University of Iowa. They have a pharmaceutical school there, and that's in itself not uncommon. But what most people don't realize, they have an FDA approved manufacturing facility, one of the few in the country attached to a university, that we could be doing trial manufacturing drugs there. And now that we know that we need to bring our pharmaceutical industry back to the US, right, and our nutraceuticals, and our supply chain needs to come back. And if there was ever a wake-up call to America, this was it, to rally us to say, we need to incentivize these companies, right? We need to bring them back on shore. And I can't think of a better place for many of them to land than the state of Iowa.
Absolutely. Because you save a couple bucks having it go offshore, and then you spend 10 times that to get it back. So
correct. Right. So, and the other thing we learned, our manufacturing is our largest growth state product here, and we have capabilities, strong capabilities, but we also need to strengthen our supply chain, right? And we need to know, because we had, the University of Iowa 3D printing mask, and then we had manufacturers printing different parts of that. And, I've got a deep memory because I've been in almost every manufacturing plant in the state, I swear, at one time, right? But, but what if Debi Durham's not here to make that connection? Or Cirrus, we've got to work with Cirrus to really strengthen that supply chain to where it just takes, all you have to do is look and say, you need this thing manufactured. Here's who can do it down the street in Iowa. And even really start paying attention how we support manufacturing from, the big, large OEMs all the way down to the smallest supplier, and keep those supply chains strong in Iowa as well.
Yeah. How can businesses help consumers feel confident? And we've kind of touched on this, but I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on supporting business, especially on our main street,
Yes.
Iowa.
Well, first of all, we have a landing page on our website, iowabusinessrecovery.com, and anything that really has a line of sight to business is there. It's pretty comprehensive. If we haven't already, we're going to be launching some things for businesses of what they need to do as they reopen and get people comfortable, some guidelines. And I think it's really good work that we're putting out there. The other thing is that we're kind of shifting some of our marketing. We were big on the This Is Iowa campaign, and of course we'll go back to that, and really showing Iowa that should be the place of choice for both individuals to move to, because we have opportunity as well as business. Now we're going to do the Iowans Unite, about how important it is to get out and help our small businesses. The other thing, Bill, though, I think it's really important, at the board meeting of IEDA a week or so ago, we actually signed a contract that the state is going to be working with an Iowa company called Shop Where You Live. And we're going to create an online portal for businesses for Shop Iowa. And that the state's going to pay for the infrastructure of that. And then we'll pay the maintenance for the first year. And then after that, the business or the community picks it up. Because what I learned during this, the businesses that are innovative, number one, and two, that are connected with an online presence are much stronger coming out of that, these weeks of closure, than those that didn't. And so the state is going to help with that as well.
What are some valuable lessons? And we've talked quite a bit about this and other things. What are some valuable lessons we've learned from this pandemic, and what would you like to see going forward? And I know you've kind of covered a lot of that already, but.
Well, I think definitely you're going to see us really be more strategic on bringing that supply chain back to Iowa, right? And, building out that bio platform. And we already talked about broadband and all that will help us, even from just delivering services, like I said, the enterprise of government. But the other thing that I think we're new is how business is going to look different going forward, and we need to realize that, right? So you're going to see more and more companies make decisions not to have real estate, and they're going to let people work from home. Now that's got both challenges on one side, that what do we do with real estate that's been built, to though the opportunity that means from expansion of labor force. Because even though we have really high unemployment now due to COVID, once we get back to work, we still have a population issue here, right? I mean, we still have to grow our population when you look at the baby boomers that are going to be exiting. And so I think the world of work is going to look totally different, and how we're going to navigate that. And I think that's going to be great opportunity in front of us, but it will certainly present some challenges as well.
Hey, Debi, as Iowa reopens, childcare continues to be an area of concern across most of Iowa. How do we expand access to childcare to help employees return to work?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's a private-public partnership, and it has to truly be a private-public partnership. I think we need a big conversation in the state systemically. We need to change the way we fund childcare. And, that's, I've been talking with the new director, Kelly Garcia, which would be another great one to have on your show, from DHS. Yeah. And, I think that we need to really look about, and maybe this is an area where we look at subsidies, but we also have to encourage the private sector to join us in that conversation. I'm not saying they need to run daycares. I mean, that's not, but certainly about being a private-public partnership, maybe helping with some vouchers, because it really does. And we have to look at the wage scale with these childcare workers, right? I mean, we need to make the industry more appealing for people to go into, because when you think of what they're doing there, it is so critical. And with Iowans having so many dual income, workers in one family, it is critical. So it was a topic of conversation going into it. It's certainly going to be a topic coming out. Someone said, well, I hope they pass something. And I said, well, I hope they don't, because I think it's something that needs a bigger conversation, right? It needs a plan of
Right.
really how this looks. And it's not just offering a tax credit and saying we check the box. It really is, we have to do a systemic change the way we fund daycare, I think, in this state.
Well, and there's so many prongs to it, right? I mean, because the
Correct.
schools affect that too, at the school's open date, and that
Correct.
affects childcare and
Correct.
parents' ability to get their kids taken care of and go to work.
But I also think that this is another good thing has come from this, though, because, as we start onboarding people back here, because, we at one time for weeks, we had 95% of our staff was remote. We've got some people that won't be back at all this summer because of childcare issue, because of camps being canceled and those kind of things. And I think employers are going to be more open to that, because we've also learned that people truly can work remotely and be productive. And I'm one of those employers that needed to know that, right? Because I think I'm a people person, Bill. You know that. You and I both are, right? We really thrive off the energy of other people. And so I want a building full of people that I can stop at someone's desk and say, what about this idea? But I've also learned that, it's opened my eyes to say, wow, not only are we not missing a beat on our regular work working remotely, but we're launching new programs. And it doesn't replace the need for connectivity, but it certainly has made me as an employer be a lot more sensitive to those that don't have childcare to work around these issues. So I think you're going to find employers being a lot more accommodating coming out of this, because we've lived it, and we've seen that that's some of maybe the impressions we have were not completely accurate.
Hey, and kind of dovetailing off that a little bit, given the impact of school closures, how do you see the role of Iowa's ed tech companies? I think you kind of touched on that a little bit, but
it's huge opportunity for us. And here we have ACT, McGraw-Hill, and Pearson. We have these legacy companies in our backyard, and then you have all these startups. And one of the startups I'm going to give a shout out is Pear Deck, because Pear Deck has been around for a while. Their startup came out of the Iowa City area. We've actually given them some innovation funds through IEDA. In fact, they won one of the big prizes at South by Southwest a few years ago, and I was actually there to celebrate with them. But they're all about remote learning skills or solutions, and it's one that but again, it needs to be more widely adopted. In Iowa, we have this thing called local control, as of education, and I think that serves us well in so many fronts. I'm not denying that. But I also think that this has taught us we probably need more uniformity when it comes to offering remote learning. And we in the K-12 organization needs to look at our own backyard, because we have all these companies that are fostered here. And we need to be able to incubate these new technologies in our school district. But I am confident our new director, Ann, I'm very excited about her. And once we get past the crisis stage, and I know Ryan was too, he was part of those conversations as well. But I think they're going to be a great champion of seeing more of this technology being deployed in their school district.
I think her whole staff, since because I've been paying attention every day to her news conferences and seeing a lot of the new directors and a lot of the new staff that she has are phenomenal. I mean, if I was
very
in good
excited.
hands.
Yeah, I'm so pleased to serve with this group of dedicated professionals, and we really do work across organizations. We're really here to help each other, and Governor Reynolds has really created a culture which is all about innovation and collaboration and problem solving. She wants her directors to be problem solvers.
Yep, and that's what I like about her, is because she doesn't dominate those press conferences. She calls up the expert to answer that area of expertise. So I know you were just there on Friday. So
correct. That's exactly right.
Yep. Tourism is a key part of economic success. How is Iowa positioned to help long-term investment in travel and tourism?
Well, one is, I think the thing we could do and have been doing the last few years is really elevated about how critical of an economic driver it is for our economy. It's nearly a $9 billion industry when you factor in everything. And they've been devastated. I mean, again, with so many hotels being, basically empty because all the conferences and events have been canceled because we can't gather with, large groups. Sales tax, for motel, hotel max tax is really off, and that's revenue that we can't replace. I think that, again, it's an industry that's going to have to look at things differently. And I know that there's some really strong leaders right now in that industry that have come forth with some things that they think we could be doing differently. Some of the small things we're doing is Dream Now, visit later, doing more virtual visits to places top of mind. The other thing is people aren't going to be traveling a lot, because I think it's going to be a while before people are comfortable getting back on an airplane, before they start traveling the country. It may be an opportunity more as things are opening up that we get out and see what's in our backyard. And because we've got some phenomenal parks here. In fact, we're going to be doing a big campaign with the 100-year celebration of our parks. We've got wonderful attractions across the state, great cultural and arts events. And so I think you're going to really see a push for Iowans to get out and really begin to see what all we have to offer this summer. And so I think that's pretty exciting.
I think we'll get a lot of, I was talking to my wife here this weekend. I think we're going to get a lot of people, car traffic in Iowa.
I agree.
They won't get on a plane, but they'll get in their RV or their car.
Yeah. Well, and gas prices I think are still going to be reasonable. And,
absolutely.
And in fact, my only grandson lives in Long Island, and so we go out once a year. And I was ready to book airline tickets. My husband said, "Not so fast." So I guess we're driving to Long Island. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Think of all the beautiful country you're going to see.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. We've done it before. As long as we have a good podcast system to listen to.
Absolutely.
We can do it and still maintain our marriage when we get done. Yeah. Yeah. We've been married 38 years, so I think we're kind of used to it.
That's the only thing bad about passenger travel is you got to be with each other for 8, 9
and
hours.
I'm not a really good passenger because I'm either reading or doing something or on my phone working. And
with COVID-19's disproportionate impact on individuals of color, particularly at food processors and minority-owned small businesses, are there additional things that could be done to ensure these populations don't fall further behind?
I'll tell you what, that's been really discouraging when you see those statistics, right? And so it is definitely something that we're not only, first of all, I think you have to be aware of it, right? So we've recognized it. And then two, it's what you're going to do about it. Now, looking at the meatpacking industry particularly, they are putting things in place. On the plant floors, even though the plant floors themselves are very safe, it was the staging and bringing on folks in the break rooms, and they had not been doing social distancing, and so they've certainly started that. And then educating folks of what you do outside of work. And some of the things we've even learned, we ran a separate program for targeted small businesses, Bill grant program, in addition to the other program. And some of the things that I've learned experiencing that we can do a better job of really reaching out to that population. And so once we're kind of past because right now we're still responding, we're still in the mitigation stage. But once we look towards that recovery stage, there are some things that we're going to be promoting and some new partnerships we're going to be forming here through the targeted small business with an outreach to those communities. And so that we have a voice and an opportunity to do better, I think, and to make sure that we are communicating with them and we're taking those needs into account. So yeah, we definitely have learned a lot in that area as well.
Hey, Debbie, my last question, because I'm sure you make me tired just listening to all the stuff that you have to do and that you have done. And so I don't want to take away any more of your day, but I kind of have a summary question as my last one. Sure. It's just when Iowa has gotten through this pandemic and the history books are written, what would they say about Iowa?
I think that they're going to say what I started with, that we acted swiftly, we acted with purpose, and we acted with compassion. And we made the best decisions we could make with the information that was before us at the time.
Absolutely. And like I told you before, I think the governor and you and all her staff have done a phenomenal job of kind of getting us through this. I know we're not done yet, but without any kind of a roadmap or a manual, I think I was in good hands, and I feel pretty good about that. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Bill, because you're always going to be Mayor Bill to me. Yeah.
Thank you. And I appreciate that, Debbie. I do. So I'll see you down the road, I'm sure, somewhere. So
We will, for sure.
our guest again today has been Debi Durham, Director of the Iowa Economic Authority and the Iowa Finance Authority, and Chief Bottle Washer, I guess, as well.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, I would agree.
so thank you very much, Debbie. We'll see you soon.